welcome to the second in our series of beginners webinars. My name is Nikki Kimball, one of the educational consultants on the team, and you are here for the Introduction to the Teacher Tools webinar. So in today's session, we are going to be looking at the teacher tools. So that will involve looking at how we can set up our own teaching classes within J2 Dashboard. We're going to look at J2 Stars, J2 Message, J2 Homework and the Parent Portal, and I'll also highlight what is next in our webinar series. This is a 45-minute session. It's quite a tight session. I may run over by a couple of minutes because there is a lot of content to get into this session. Questions, as always, are happily received through the chat. I do have Mary in the background, who is our Northern Irish consultant, who is more than capable in answering all of your questions. She'll hate me for saying that. So anything that you want to know, please just type that in the chat. I will be doing a Q&A session at the end, so if you do want to ask anything, you are more than welcome. So we're going to dive straight into it now. Unfortunately, this is less practical than our previous webinar, just because of the nature of the tools. So I do apologise. This is mostly going to be a bit of a chalk and talk. But all of these tools do feature in our YouTube channel. So if you do need anything to refer back to, you can visit the YouTube channel. So the first thing we're going to look at is how we can set up our own teaching classes within J2 Dashboard. Now, the teaching classes are different to your registration classes. The majority of you will be joining us from a managed service, I do believe. So those of you that are joining us from Northern Ireland, you will be within C2K. Those of you joining us from Scotland, you'll be joining us from Glow. So this is a different process to the registration classes. So those will be pre-created for you through a managed service. But these allow you to set up smaller groups of students. So an example that I usually use is kind of your table groups or your ability groups that you might have within various lessons. So it allows you to differentiate those groups so you can set differentiated pieces of work. And it's really useful for the other tools that we're going to look at. So things like J2 Stars, J2 Message, Spell Blast. It's great for setting different spellings for different groups within your registration class, and also setting different pieces of homework. So this can be done through the dashboard. So the dashboard, once you log in, is found here. It is an admin only tool. So it is all teachers have put my teeth back in, admin access, and we're going to go to the classes tab here. So as I said, if you're a managed service, you will already have these green classes. These are our registration classes. So these will be preset if you're a managed service. If you're not a managed service, you can create your own registration classes as well. So if you do log in manually, not using an LGFL or a Glow or a C2K account, you can create registration classes as well. So how we set up teaching classes is just pressing this plus button here. And you'll see registration class or teaching class. Now, as I've said, if you're a managed service, you won't have either of these buttons at the top. You'll just have class name. So don't panic if it doesn't have these two buttons. I'm a manual school, so I log in by typing in my account name, my username, and my password. So that's why I have the two options here. So if you are a manual school, you select the teaching class. If you're not, you just add a class name. Now, I've already got my literacy group 1 and my literacy group 2. So I'm going to create a literacy group 3. And there we go. And then I just click OK. And you can see as I sort of scroll down that has added that group there at the bottom. So at the moment, I am the only person in that group because I've just created it. But to add more users, we just use this drop down button, the expand button there, and that shows me who's in that group. And I can add more people. So that could be extra staff, that could be students. And if I hold the control button, I can multi-select students. Let's put another member of staff in there. Let's put Mr. Mann in there. My mouse is being a bit funny. And when you've selected all of the pupils or all of the users you want to add, you just click OK, and that's added all of those into that group. Now, if I did want to remove any students at that point, Maybe they've moved up a group or down a group, or you just want to move them out of that group. We can select their name and just press that button there, and that will delete that user. The other thing that we can do is we can rename those groups. So for example, if a class moves up a year group, you could rename that. For example, you could say P4 literacy group 3 or P3 literacy group 3, and just move that as and when you need to. So there we go. That is how we can set teaching classes. So it's a really useful tool that it means that you can set certain pieces of work for certain students. We're going to look at J2 Stars now. This is our pupil behaviour reward system. So it allows you to reward students for certain activities that they might have done, for certain skills. You can also add personalised feedback. You can reset your own class points. You can adjust how the points are counted or viewed. And you can also create your own student certificates. Now, this is one of the things that features in the parent portal. So your parents will be able to see any stars that are awarded and any personalised feedback that is provided for your students. Now, stars is found off the Launchpad. My mouse is not working very well today, which is here. And it will open up like this. So the green folders are your registration classes. The purple folders are your smaller groups. So that's great. Maybe if you've got an intervention group that goes out with a support assistant, for example, they can then award points for just that particular group. So we can open those up and we will get a very similar view. Now I'm going to do it for my class, which is class 1. That is my demo class. So as I click on class 1, I can see all of my students here. I'm just going to hide this. So a few of the things that we can do, we can award students points. So we can click on the student and we have a variety of different skills that we can award for. So for example, I could say, who's being kind today? And just clicking on that skill will award that point for that student. I can also, when I click on that student, I've got the option to leave a comment. So I can tick that box and then select something. So I could say working hard. So I can offer some personalised feedback. So that's really good if they've got specific circumstances. Maybe they've done something particularly out of the ordinary. And it just allows you to give that feedback to that student. So we could say Lottie scored, I don't know, 10 out of 10 for her spellings. There we go. And that's going to award that to Lottie. I can also award points as a whole class. So you've got your whole class button there. So I can click that. You may want to leave a comment for the whole class, or you can untick that. And I could say they were all doing some really good listening. Now, other things that we can do, we can fine tune those settings for the class points. So if I go up to settings here, and if I go to skills, you can see I've got all of my skills here, and some of them are preset. So these top ones are preset. So things like working hard, teamwork, and being kind, they're all preset. And you can delete those as well. But what we can do at the bottom, we can add a skill. So for example, we might want to have sitting on my carpet spot, a great one for the beginning of the year, especially with your younger students, where it's trying to herd cats, isn't it really? So we can choose an icon to go with that. You can also choose a picture from your My Files. So it might be that you want a picture of them all sat on their carpet spot. So you could have that. So you could take that as a photograph using the camera. But I'm going to use my rainbow. I'm going to set how many points. So that could just be 1 point, could be 10 points, could be 20 points, depending on how many points you want to award for that skill. And I can hit save. Now you can also award negative points. Now it really depends on your behaviour strategy. If you do have that as part of your behaviour policy, so you could add negative skills, so things like forgetting PE kit or being unprepared, and you would do that in the same way. Now, other things that we can do within the settings, we can sort how it is sorted. So you may want it on alphabetical order according to first name. So you can see that has rearranged all my students. Doesn't look like they're in alphabetical order for some bizarre reason. Don't know why that hasn't worked, but it should. And we'll stick to positive points. There we go. Other things that we can do. We can reset the points. So this will just reset the points here for your class. So that is different. We can reset the points as a whole school, and I'll show you how to do that in a second, but that is how you'd reset your class points. So some classes like to do that weekly, some like to do it half-termly, some just like to top them up over the whole year. So it's really personal preference at that point. You can also streamline the view. So at the moment, I'm seeing all of my points, but you can streamline that to just show the month's points, the week's points, or the day's points. So there's lots of things you can do within those settings there. Other things that we can do, we can use our randomizer. So this is just a digital version of your lollipops in a jar. When you need that one student to go and do a particular task and you don't want to be show any favoritism, you can just use the randomizer. So there we go, Oliver can go in. I always say Oliver can go and take the register, but I think I'm showing my age there. It's definitely not a job that gets done anymore. So there we go, Oliver can go and take a note to the office for me. So that's one thing that we can use. And we've got our timers. Who doesn't need a timer in class? So you've got your countdown timer and your stopwatch. We can also view students. So as we hover over any of these students, we can have a look. So let's have a look at view user. That's going to show me my students' view. So this is what the students see when they log in. They can see their total points here. They can see the points that they've received. And any feedback that they receive as well is in yellow. Here you have the option to award certificates. So you can award certificates on a specific skill. So maybe they've done something fantastic. They've gone above and beyond what they should. So we could say, oh, she's got a 10 out of 10 for spellings. We can create a certificate for that. So I can click that and that will generate my certificate. You can also custom create a certificate and you can type in your text there for what you are awarding that certificate. So those are nice little motivators for your students. Another thing that I like to do, or I would do if I still had a class, unfortunately I don't, when your students log in, so let's have a look, this is my student, she can log into her stars, which I couldn't see for a second, there it is. She can change her avatar. So something that I sort of recommend, especially if social, emotional, mental health is a focus for you as a school, and if you were quite fortunate with your devices, you could get your students to come in and to assign their avatar to reflect how they're feeling that day. So we could get Lottie to save that. So now if I go back to my teacher account, you can see Lottie's here at the top. If I refresh my page, can see Lottie's looking a little bit worried there. So I can see at a glance, if all my students are doing that at the beginning of the lesson, I can see at a glance maybe which students I need to have a little mental health check-in with. So Mark's not looking too good, Lee's looking a bit upset, and Lottie's looking a bit upset. So that's just a nice little sideline activity for you to do. Now, if you are a computing or a using ICT lead, you can reset points for the entire school. So I would only recommend this if you are the subject lead. So you can reset the whole school's points by going to the settings within the class view. You go to settings and you've got your option here for points. The orange one is for just resetting the points. So that resets the points for the entire school. So that's a good thing to do maybe at the beginning of the term or even at the beginning of the academic year. Now this red one, it's red for a reason. That will do what is essentially a factory reset. So that is a hard reset that will reset any stars, any points, but it will also reset any skills that have been created by all teachers. So for example, that sitting on the carpet spot skill that we just created, if I was to press this now, that would remove that skill. So sometimes it's a nice thing to do at the beginning of a school year, but just you might want to check with teachers before you do that hard reset. You can also create skills as a whole school, and that can be done here. So anything I create in this area will then be applied to every class in school. So again, that's really good. Maybe you're focusing on, I don't know, blast games, having a go at blast games with our J2 Blast. So you might want to add that as a skill, or I don't know, speaking kindly to teachers, that sort of thing. So that is J2 stars. We're going to move on to setting homework using J2 homework. So this is a great way of setting tasks for your students. It doesn't have to be homework. These could be activities that your students then complete in the lesson. Now we can set homework in one of two ways. Both are done using J2 homework, but we can set activities as homework directly from the resource library, which we looked at in the last webinar. So you can do that using the homework button, and you can also create homework manually by creating your own homework activity. So I'm going to show you both ways now. So I'm going to find an activity in the library to set for my students. So I'm going to open up the library, and maybe this is a maths homework that I want to use. So let's scroll, let's go for our seaside counting. So I'm going to open that up, and I've got these two buttons here, share and homework. So if I click homework, that is going to preset or pre-populate that homework activity. So we've got our title. So this is what homework looks like when you're creating an activity. We've got our title here and our description. You can edit that. This is just pulling this directly from the library, so you can embellish that if you need to, if you feel that your students need a bit more description. You've also got the option to record audio instructions. It's great for your students that maybe aren't so strong with their literacy skills. You could add those audio instructions. You've also got the option to add additional files. Now, this is a library resource, so it's got the links to the files already, but you can want to add in some additional files. Then all you need to do is to add the class that you want to set the homework for. So my class is class 1, so I would click that. You can assign this to multiple classes. So for example, maybe you're working within multiple classes in the same year group. Maybe you're a multi-form entry. So you can set for multiple classes to complete that homework. And then we click OK. Then the other thing that we can do is change the start date. Now, by default, it always starts on the day that you're creating this, but we can set it so that it appears in the future. So if you're anything like I used to be, I used to do a lot of my planning on a Sunday night. Oof, that Sunday night feeling, don't miss that. But you could set it on a Sunday so that it starts to appear on a Tuesday and then have the due date on a Thursday, for example. So you can change both the start date and the due date. Once you're done, you click create homework, and you can see that seaside counting has now been added into my homework list. So this is J2 homework. This is what the overview sheet looks like, sort of the landing page for J2 homework. So you can see here, these are the homeworks that I've already set. It gives you a nice overview. You've got an idea of what the activity is, and you can see how many students have completed that homework. Other things you can do from this view, you've also got the option to look at school homework, so you can see what other teachers are setting as well. So you can keep an eye on maybe how many pieces of homework certain classes have got. And you can show expired homeworks as well. So if we go back to my homework and show expired homeworks, this will take me back. So you can see this sort of due soonest, the earliest ones that I've set. So you can reset pieces of homework that you have previously set for previous year groups. So that's useful, and you can search those homeworks as well. So that's the overview, and that is setting a homework from the library. You can also create a piece of homework here. So if you have a particular piece of homework, now I haven't really sort of thought about what I'm going to set. So I'm going to add a file first, and then I'm going to add the title and the description after. So let's have a look. What have I got in my files? So here we go. So this is a little preview for one of my live lessons that I'm doing next month. Oh no, at the end of this month actually. This is a Smart Rules mix file. So this could be an ebook starter template that I want my students to complete. So I'm going to add a title. So I'm going to click in that box and say JIT mix. Oh no, I haven't done that very well. Smart Rules ebook. So please complete the ebook using your knowledge of the SMART rules. There we go. So I could record audio if I wanted to. You can add multiple files here as well. So I actually have a reference poster of the SMART rules. So I could have that as a reference point. And what I can also do is I can set that as an example so they can't edit that. So that's great if you've got, I always refer to it as a waggle, but apparently not many people know what that is. That's what a good one looks like. So it is an example. So you could have that for them to look at, refer to, read, and then use that information to then create that content. You can also add URLs. So maybe I have a link to maybe a video on YouTube about the SMART rules. I can copy and paste that link in there. Then once you're done, you add your class that you want to assign it to, same as we did in the last one, start date, due date, and then you create your homework. So that has added that SMART rules book as a piece of homework. So that is how you as a teacher set homework. So pupils completing homework, there's a few steps to this now. So your pupils will open the homework tool, they'll make a change to that homework file. They'll save the file and then they add the homework, so they link it to the homework and mark it as complete. So this is that process. So this is my student account. She would open up her homework and there we go. We've got that seaside counting that we've added and the SMART rules ebook. So I'm going to use that one. So I'm going to open it up. So just to show you, we've got the PDF so she can look at this. She can see, right, I've got to be safe. I'm not going to meet anyone online, accepting, reliable, and tell. And then, so that is a reference only. She has this ebook template that I've made in JIT Mix. So she can start to edit this. So for example, let's get her to add a new page. And then we'll have meet. Now, obviously, she would spend much longer on this, but she's going to save that once she's done. And then it's very clever because it will know that you're doing this as part of homework. So you can say, do you want to add this to your file? You can say yes. And that will then automatically add that file to her homework. So if she goes back to her homework, and she refreshes that page, you can see that has added that. Now, if she clicks no, she can still add that file. So she can click add and she can go to her files and she can add that from her My Files. She's also got the option to add things like video and photo and links to things. So it really depends on what level students that you're working with, what age students you're working with. They may have all of those linked to a piece of homework. And then when they're done, they click mark completed and it will just prompt them to say yes. And there we go. And that has removed that out of that list for that student so they know that they've done that. So that is a pupil completing their homework. Marking homework. So this is something that we've done a lot of work on in the last year or so. So it has changed somewhat to what it was last year. It offers you the chance to be able to authorize whether a piece of homework is submitted to the required level. So even though students submit their homework, you have to mark it and say whether you think it's complete or not complete. So to do that, I'm just going to go back to my homework and I'm just going to refresh my page. So you can see with my SMART book, my SMART rules ebook, I've got one student that has submitted it. So I can click on that piece of homework and I've now got this list that's appeared once my students start to complete. So I can see 1 out of 22 has submitted. So I've got this list here, submitted. So I can see Lottie submitted. I can click on the not submitted. So I know those are the students I need to nag and say, come on, it's time to do your homework. But I can look at my submitted and I've got this option to view. Now what's really nice about this, and this works differently to how it used to, I can click on view. It's going to show me the pieces of work. So if she submitted multiple pieces of work, I can click on each of those pieces of work. So I can click on the SMART rules. I can see there's those changes. I can see that she has, yeah, she's done all right. She's only got to page 3. So I know that she needs to do a little bit more work on that particular piece of work. So I can say not yet complete. So if I was to say that not yet complete, that would send that back to that student and it would reappear in their list of homework. You could then add a learning conversation, which we looked at last time, on that piece of work within the pupil files and just offer them some feedback. But if that was complete, so imagine that was completed to a brilliant standard, I can click complete, and that then instead is going to move that to that completed level. So if I go back to my homework, that now has moved that student from the submitted area to the completed area. So this is really good for keeping track of which students or how many students you have left to complete their homework, how many have you've already marked and completed. So yeah, that is J2 homework. Again, that is another tool that is featured in the parent portal. Students will need to make sure that they are completing their homework within their pupil account, because parents do not have the ability to be able to select and mark a piece of work as complete to send it. So you do need to make that very clear with your parents if they are doing homework at home with their children, that their children need to log in and complete it within their account, otherwise it won't work properly. So that is J2 homework. We're going to move on to message now. So this is our instant messaging service. It's a great way of teaching your students how to communicate online. I know that that features in both the Northern Irish and the Scottish curriculum around using ICT. It is a walled garden environment, so your students cannot contact each other, and you have full control over how the message boards work, who can contact who, whether they can see each other's messages and that kind of thing. Okay, this is also how you would message parents through the parent portal. You would use J2 message. So message can be found from the Launchpad, and it is here. So when it opens, generally it will open in that first class that you have listed in your messages, so usually the youngest class. The message boards are along the left-hand side here, so we can scroll down. We've got our registration classes at the top, and you've also got your teaching groups. So you see we've set up our literacy group 3, that features there. Okay. You can also message as a whole school. So that's great for head teachers, or if you've got any particular whole school announcements that you need to make. Maybe you've got inset days or parents' evenings, or I don't know, show rounds or transition evenings. You can notify people using the Just2easy primary message board. So that will say your school name at the top. Now you can also message students individually. So for example, I can look for Lottie, who is my demo pupil, and I can click on Lottie and I can message her. Now when I click on either a discussion board, either a class or a pupil, the top one, so the blue one I've got highlighted at the moment, that is that pupil. And if she has any parents linked, they will feature underneath. And however many parents you have linked, that there'll be multiple people, if that makes sense. So if mum was there, dad would be another one, maybe grandma's another one. So you can message them all separately as well. Okay. So I'm going to message my class. So if I click on class 1, I can see I'm messaging class 1. So I'm messaging the pupils at the moment. We will look at messaging parents after we've done messaging pupils. Okay, so we're looking at this from a teaching perspective at the moment as opposed to a communication perspective. So I have different things that I can do with my messaging board. I have these settings here along the right. So I can, at the moment, I'm allowing messages from pupils. So that means when I send a message, my pupils can message back. Okay, I can switch that off. So if I've switched it off now, that is a one-way messaging service. So I can send this to my pupil. So I could say, I don't know, school is closed tomorrow. And I can hit send. So that means my students won't be able to message back to that. They can just view that. Now, it might be that you would quite like your students to message back. So what I can do is I can tick that, but I've got this additional option here. So at the moment it's locked. So if I leave that locked, that means students can now message back, but they can't see each other's messages. Only I can see the pupil messages as they come in. Okay. I can also unlock that. So if I tick unlock, that now means pupils can message back and they can see each other's messages. So this really depends, A, on the age of your children, and B, on the maturity of your children. And potentially C, you could open that up as a teaching tool and have that only open whilst you're using it within class. It really depends on again, how mature your students are, but it's a great way of teaching your students that they should be communicating appropriately, not using, you know, saying rude things on the message board, setting out those ground rules initially. You can leave that completely locked if you want to. It's entirely up to you. So just to give you a view of the pupil view, so my pupil will get a notification that they've had a message. They'll also get a notification if I refresh on message itself. They can see this is the message board that they are within, so it will show them all the classes that they are included in. And there is that message. So my student can reply to that message. So she could say, I don't know, thanks, miss, and she can hit send. There we go. She's also got the option to use speech to text, so she can dictate her message, and you could send attachments if you wanted to. So just to give you a view back on my teacher account now, there is that message, and I can see that it is unlocked. So pupils can see each other's messages at this point. Now you have full control in terms of being able to delete any messages. So you can delete them. Pupils can delete them as well. But you do have the safety net here of being able to show deleted messages. So for example, maybe a student made a disclosure, or they sent an inappropriate message that they then deleted. You can reinstate that message if you need to. There is a message log as well. I am going to show you that in the next part. But all messages are logged within the message log. You do need to make users aware that those are there. It logs every message, including teacher messages, including parent messages, including pupil messages. So it is really quite important that you write that into your accept or usage policy if you are going to be using this as a tool. Okay, so that is messaging pupils, so using it as a teaching tool. Messaging parents, it works in a very similar way. To message the parents within a class, you can click on that box underneath. There it says message all parents and carers, and you can always see who you are messaging in that top left. So I can see it does make it very clear. If I click on any of my other classes, which I don't have any other connected parents by the looks of things, class 5? No. There we go, Northern Ireland. So I could click parents and carers, and that will show me those parents and carers in that class. So I can message them. So again, I'm going to say school is closed tomorrow, and I can hit send. So that is going to send to my parents and carers. You have less power here, but you are able to change things in the dashboard, which I'm going to show you in a second, but you do have the option to reinstate deleted messages. So again, in this discussion board, it will only be teacher messages. Okay, so when a parent, if they're allowed, if you have chosen for them to be able to reply, if a parent sends a message, if they reply to a message in the class discussion board, it moves to a one-to-one message with them and that teacher. So that will become clearer in a second. But that is how you would message all parents and carers. So that message we will look at again in a second. Okay, so that is JT message. That is how you would message pupils. That is how you would message parents. That is how you would use speech to text functionality. And you've also got that attachment. and all those personalization tools in that top right hand corner, locking the discussion board, opening it up, allowing messages for pupils, and also reinstating deleted messages. I'm doing well for time. I'm quite impressed with myself. The parent portal. I'm sure this is something that you are all interested in. So the parent portal is a way that parents can have access to their child's account, so they can see various things that their child is learning. They can receive messages, they can see homework, they can see J2 stars, and they can also see the school blog site, J2Webby. So there is a setup process that is involved for the parent portal, and that is done through the dashboard. Okay, so we're going to open that up again. I'm just going to close some of these tabs just so I don't get mixed up. There's a message from Lottie. So the dashboard is here. Now, just to highlight this area, because this is quite important really. Along the left-hand side, we have these 4 options here. So you don't have to use the parent portal. By default, it is on. Now, don't worry if it's on and you don't want to use it, because parents have to be invited either by email or by QR code for them to access it. So this is not something you can sneak in and start using without the school's knowledge, because they have to have that email invite or that QR code invite. So don't panic if that's switched on and you didn't realise it doesn't do anything. You have these 3 options here. So if you don't want to use the messaging service, you can switch that off completely. So that might be that you've got a messaging service that works and you're keeping it, but you still want to use the parent portal for parents to be able to see work. So you can switch that off completely. You can also allow just teachers to message parents. So if you want it to be a one-way messaging service with teachers just, notifications, it's parents' evening tonight, homework's due tomorrow, PE kits tomorrow, you can switch off parental messaging. Okay, you might want it to be a 2-way messaging service, in which case we can turn that on. But you might just want them being able to message only their class teacher, or a class teacher and a teaching assistant, or a class teacher and an admin within the office. So what you can do then is you can configure for each class which members of staff they can communicate with. So for example, class 2, I might just want to, let's choose a different class I haven't configured already, class 4, there we go. So at the moment, by default, it'll be set so they can message any teacher in school. So what we can do at this point is we can click choose, and again, holding down that control button, you can choose multiple members of staff. So we could say, right, I want those 3 staff to be contactable for or by the class, I think, is it 4 that we've selected? Class 4 teachers? Class 4 teachers. So that they can now contact those 3 teachers. And you can change that at any point. So you can go back to choose and you can deselect certain members of staff. So now that's 2 teachers. You would need to do that for every registration class. I would just do it for the registration classes because that will be all of your pupils. I wouldn't worry too much about your literacy groups unless they're a particular group that maybe have their own members of staff, in which case you might want to configure that. Okay, and then the last thing that you can switch off is you can remove access to the child files. So that will allow the parents to be able to see the entirety of their child's My Files area. So anything they save within My Files, they can view it, but you can switch that off. So if you don't like that, you can switch that off. And then we've got that J2 message log. So that's what I was talking about earlier. It logs every message sent to any teacher, to any parent, to any pupil within any discussion board. So you do need to make people aware that that is something that is being logged prior to using this tool, more for privacy than anything. But that is a very important tool. It covers you for any disclosures. It covers you for any inappropriate comments. you will always have access to that content, even if it's deleted. So that really is a safety net for you as professionals. Right, so the setting up of it, so that is the sort of the settings of the parent portal. The parent portal itself is here. And we can now invite parents in 2 different ways. So parents can be invited using an email address, and that will be done. So I'm just going to choose, let's go for Lucy. So if I wanted to manually input an email address, you can click invite parent. That's going to open up a little dialog box, and then you would type that email address and click invite, and they would receive an email. They can click on that email. It gives them a short little registration page that they need to click on the link. They register, and then they'll get a verification email that they also need to click for that to work. Okay, so they receive an email, they click on the email link, they register, then they click on the verification email. Okay, so that's an important part of that process. So that's one way. The other way that we can do it is we can create class QR codes to either send home or for people to come in and scan in school. So we select the class that we want to generate and we click create QR codes. Now that is going to create a QR code per student. So if you have siblings within school, the parents will receive, so for example, they've got 3 children in a school, they would receive 3 QR codes. Okay, so you would need to send home the 3 separate QR codes. They would register using the first QR code. And then for each subsequent child, they just scan it and it links them all together. So they only need to register for that first child. Okay, so they either receive a manually input email, they click on the link, they register, they receive a verification email, they click on that link, and that will then set up their parent portal. Or they can scan the QR code using a smart device, using the camera app. It asks them to register, and then they're linked up. We do have an app that is working brilliantly, and it does have notifications on it. This is the parent view. So I am going to run a couple of minutes over. I do apologise. This is the parent view. So they can see, as you can see, homework task, outstanding homework tasks. They have the messages in the top right. They see how many stars they have. They can click and open J2 homework. They can click and open the child's files. They can upload files on their behalf, and they can also access the class blog through J2 Webby. So this is my parent portal. Your parents can access it either through the app, which they can download from the App Store. If they don't have a smart device or they don't want to download the app, they can also go to parent.j2e.com and they can log in there, so we can sign in. This is what the registration page looks like, so it's very short, okay, but there's the login page. I'm going to click sign in. If they have multiple children at the same school, that will link them all together. So they will have a list. So we can have a look at Lottie. And there we go. I can see there's 2 homework tasks that she's got outstanding. She's had 3 J2 stars. So let's have a look at these. Let's have a look at J2 stars. So there we go. She's got the pupil view. So mum can see the pupil view. She can see what Lottie's been awarded, and she can see the feedback that Lottie's received. Homework, mum can click, open that up. We've got those 2 outstanding homework tasks. I was going to say spelling tasks because I was reading that. She can click on those. And this is what I was saying earlier. So if you are using J2 homework, parents need to it needs to be made very clear to parents that if their child is completing homework through J2, through Just2easy, they need to log in as the child, because you can see here I've got no mark as complete button. Okay, so that needs to be quite clear. This is more just to give them an overview of what is being set as homework, as opposed to them being able to submit it on the child's behalf. Okay. That button links to exactly the same place. That just gives an overview of how many tasks are outstanding. We've got our child files. If we open that up, the parent can see all the outstanding tasks. They can also communicate using the learning conversations. So we can click in that, and your parent could also message in that and say, this looks like a really nice piece of writing, or I've read this and it reads really nicely. So you have that option. Now remember, that can be switched off within the settings. So if you don't like that they can do that, you can switch that off and that whole tile will disappear. Your parents can upload files on behalf of their child. So we can go to choose files. I'm just going to add in a screenshot, for example, and that will upload to the child's My Files. So if I go back, and if I open up child's files, and it should just work. See, oh, it's because I've already added it before. It's down there. It did work. Had a panic then. So that's because I've added that before. But yes, so your parent can upload files on their behalf. And I'm going to look at J2 Webby before we look at the messaging, and then we're done. So anything that's published onto your class blog site can be viewed by your parents. So here we go. This is class 1. So your parents can have a look. They can view those posts in full. Now, if they do just want to view their own child's, they can scroll to the first post that's been published. So this is Lottie. They click on her name. This now just shows me the pieces of work that Lottie has completed. So that is how your parents will be able to view that. Okay. And then lastly, the messaging service. So messages will show here. They will get an email notification, and they will also get a notification on the app that there has been a message received. They can see here they are class 1. So we can see school is closed tomorrow. Now this is the class 1 messaging board. So if my parent wants to respond to that message, they click reply, and you'll notice that immediately moves that message from the class board to a one-to-one message with that teacher. So your parents will never be able to message within that whole group messaging board. So these messages will never be visible to other parents. It is a one-to-one messaging service. So your parent could say, is it open on Wednesday? Wednesday. And then they can hit send, and that now will send a notification to the teacher. So just to show you, my teacher will have a notification on message. There we go, number 1. And you can see there's a little green circle up here and Lottie, and I can see that actually it's the parent that sent it, and there is the message. I could say, yes, open as normal. And I can hit send. You can also send attachments. So this is where that tool does come into its own, really, because you can send attachments. This is great for things like newsletters. For example, maybe we're sending out this poster to parents about how to stay safe online. So I can send that out. So that could be a one-to-one, or that could be a whole school thing or a whole class. So just to go back, I can go to my launch. And I can open up my message again. That's because I had that discussion board open. Yes, so there we go. So there is that poster that I've just sent and my response to the teacher. So you can send documents and attachments to your parents. It's a great way of disseminating any information that you might have as a teacher, newsletters, that kind of thing, pieces of work that the class have done, photos that the kids have had taken in school. So you can share a lot of content. Right. Okay, so that is the parent view of the parent portal. So that is the end of the webinar. I'm just going to highlight, if you've got any questions, you can type those in the chat. Whilst you're typing your questions, I'm just going to give you some information on other sources of advertising and info that we have. If you do need to get in touch with us, you can get in touch with the ed team. So that can be done through edteam@j2e.com. That will come through to myself and Mary, who will facilitate any questions that you might have in terms of additional support. We're on Facebook. You can find us using Just2easy. and you should be able to find us. We're also on Twitter, or shall I say X, as it's now known. You can find us using the handle Just2easy_com. And then lastly, I know I've showcased this in many webinars now, but just to highlight this, we are on YouTube. We've got a huge amount of content on YouTube now. All of our webinars are recorded and they are in that webinars list. So you'll see this, the previous webinar is there, and also the webinars in the other ability groups. And we have got some live lessons. I've spent the morning scheduling some new live lessons. So we've got this terms ready to go. So we are doing that smart rules using JIT mix. That is for years 3 and 4 or P4 and 5. So please join us for that on the 24th of October. We're also doing a Titanic database and J2E5 activity for your years 5 and 6, so that's P6 and 7. And we're also doing a painting a Christmas scene using JIT paint. So that is for reception year 1, which is your P1 and 2. Bit of a shameless plug there, but I quite like having people attending my live lessons, and the others are recorded. So that are all of our contact details. So I'm just going to see if we've had any questions. I can see that potentially there might be one in the chat. Oh, Mary's handled it. Of course she has. So I'm assuming there are no more questions. So thank you very much for giving up your precious time. We hope that it's been useful. I'm just going to stop sharing since I haven't anything else to share. So thank you very much for attending. We will be doing the follow-up session. So the third session in this series will be next month. So please join us for that. And this session will and has been recorded, and I will be adding that to YouTube at some point this evening. So thank you very much. Have a good evening, and we'll see you for the next one.